Good morning. Welcome to the February 22nd edition of Advisory Live. We're powered by Nasdaq, IR Insight, and I'm your host, Will Briganti. Joining me today as my guest is Josh Collins. Josh is the head of the healthcare advisory team here at Nasdaq Advisory Services. Josh, welcome back to the program.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Good to have you back. So over the last few weeks, the topic has been market volatility.
Yes.
We've seen some volatile sessions here in the U.S. How has healthcare performed during that time?
Yeah, so on the heels of the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference and a lot of M&A that took place in this space, healthcare was actually the best performing sector. So as we entered into the market highs on January 26th, healthcare was up about 11% against the S&P, about 7.5%. So performing really well. Yeah. But then we had the big market downturn, correction territory entering there. And we actually saw healthcare in a more risk-off environment, trading completely down, underperforming most of the market, pretty much wiping out all the gains for the year at that point. From a technical perspective, though, we did hit some support at the 200-day moving average on many of the indices, and from there rebounded to where we are today. And so far, we do have healthcare still positive for the year, outperforming the S&P, but lagging a few other sectors, such as tech and financial.
Sure. Were there any sort of specific sector trends on the move lower that your team saw?
Yeah, so what we did was we actually aggregated all the settlement flows for our healthcare client base to see what kind of capital was actually moving during the sell-off. And interestingly, a lot of the larger institutional investors were really the first to start selling. We had hedge funds really trying to step in, call the bottom, so they were adding on that initial move lower. But then once we really saw that sell-off start to intensify, hedge funds started to sell into that, and eventually the larger institutions stepped in to provide that initial support. Yeah. And then from there, hedge funds really jumped in on that upward momentum. But really overall, a lot of the volume and volatility was driven by a lot of quant and algorithmic trading, which kind of flushes out throughout that whole time.
Sure, of course. And obviously, we can't go through one of these segments without talking about tax reform. Yes. So that was obviously a big discussion on our last segment. And is going to be a major theme for the rest of 2018. So how has this progressed from your standpoint?
Yeah, so we just pretty much wrapped up earnings, and it was clearly a big theme by many of the companies, all of them announcing their new tax structure and their tax rates, which were pretty favorable for all the companies, which was what the tax reform was intended to do. Sure. A lot of the tax rates that came out were actually even more favorable than what a lot of the analysts had anticipated. And a lot of the commentary coming out of that was really talking about how they're going to have a lot of excess cash at hand now, and really making them more competitive with their overseas counterparts.
Okay. Final question. Any potential headwinds or tailwinds for the healthcare space for the rest of the year?
Yeah, so when we last spoke, I said drug pricing took a little bit of a back seat. Well, that's changed a little bit. President Trump outlined some things in his budget plan about drug pricing, as well as on the State of the Union address brought up that drug prices were way too high and they need to come down. So nothing significantly material coming out just yet, but showing that the administration is really going to focus on that this year. And then I think also just really with Amazon really dipping its toe into the healthcare space, seeing how that kind of plays out and how they kind of change the landscape overall. Sure. But really, we still have a pretty catalyst-rich year for healthcare, especially in the biopharma space. So there could be a lot of positive news flow still coming out that could really help us move higher, barring any macro headwinds like we've seen recently.
Josh, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Catalyst-rich year.
Yes.
That's very good. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, this was Josh Collins. He's head of the healthcare advisory team at Nasdaq Advisory Services. For further information on that group and Nasdaq IR Insight, be sure to visit our website, business.nasdaq.com, and we'll be back to you with another segment next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.